Bryan Guzman here, sitting down with our MVP of rock mechanics, Sean Arrington. What's up, man?
How are you doing? Pretty good.
Awesome, awesome. So listen, I've been talking to a lot of our clients lately, and that's why we kind of wanted to talk to you about it. You're the guru, right? Uh, we've had a lot of questions. Can you walk me through this whole idea of a single versus a triple plug protocol? I mean, what does that mean? What are the pros and cons?
Okay. What they're referring to there with that question is when you're measuring mechanical properties, static and dynamic properties of a given material, a single plug protocol is a clever way to attack a problem of generally not having access to core, to
Okay.
a pluggable core. Um, and so what the process is, you have a single plug orientation and you have additional dynamic properties in your end cap. So you can measure your S1, your S2, your 45, and your P wave. And that gives you additional measurements that are not included generally in more standardized rock mechanics testing. And generally, we approach that problem if you have limited access to core, we can't plug cores.
Right.
And you can sort of infer some of the static properties of the other orientations based off the static properties of your. So you have a load and unload, linear elastic zone. You can get your load Young's modulus, your unload Young's modulus, and that applies to different orientations. What we generally do here, and what I prefer, is a multiple orientation, multiple plug
Okay.
approach. A few reasons I like that better, or I prefer that myself, is because I think the rock tells the truth in the sense that you don't have to assume, or you're taking direct measurements of each orientation. There's no
Both static and dynamic, right?
both static and dynamic.
Okay.
And so a little bit about, we have the capabilities in-house to do orthogonal dynamic measurements. So we have a P wave, S0, S90 degrees.
Okay.
And so we'll get those measurements in all three orientations. So you get more measurements, if that makes sense.
So the orientations being like your vertical, your horizontal, and your inclined.
Yeah. So vertical, horizontal, and a 45 generally. Or
All
30.
right. That actually brings up another interesting kind of concern around that, and I've heard this during just my discussions, and that is, well, you're now increasing the amount of samples you have to take from a maybe or maybe not a limited rock set, but it's challenging to get inclined and vertical plugs out of rocks, or vertical
It's
plugs
very
out of rocks.
challenging in some core, yes. And so in my history, in my experience, a few years ago when I was working at ConocoPhillips, we had a project that we could not get any plugs out of the core.
Okay.
The material was so friable, it seemed like if you looked at it, it poker chipped, it fell apart. We sent it off to multiple vendors, multiple labs, and we had the same results. No one could get the plug. So we came up with a process in-house to actually plug relevant core out of challenging material. And that was over 4 years ago. And since then, we've R&D'd and improved the concept and improved the process. Now, the project, we were about 5% success rate back then.
Okay.
When we incorporated it, went up to over 90% success rate.
Oh wow,
plugging.
that's a huge difference.
So that gives us the opportunity to do more tests because now we have more plugs.
Got it.
And so that's one of the big benefits of the single plug protocol is if you don't have access to that core. Or if you're worried that you have different core types. So say if you have to take one at depth 1, depth 2, and depth 3, you want to compare apples to apples, right? So we have to take our core from the same material, and then we have to quality assure it, make sure it has the same properties, same chemical makeup, same everything. And then we try to ensure that the material, the bulk is the same.
So I understand that we can do really both types. We can do a single or a triple, or at least we have some active projects doing singles as well.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And the final concern I really have, or at least that I've heard from our clients, is, whenever you're having to take multiple oriented plugs on a triple, for example,
Yes.
you're having to ensure that the rocks are exactly apples to apples, right? Because
Yes.
if you get a vertical from one rock facies, but you get the horizontal from a different rock facies, then you're not really measuring the same.
That's not
type
a
of
valid
property.
test, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what has that been an issue with you with a triple plug versus a single plug? Because I imagine it's easier with just having to do one.
The challenge there is if you're taking an oriented core, say a 45-degree core, and the rock is friable or comes apart, poker chips easily, that might be a hard sample to get. And so sometimes you have to deviate depth. But we try to ensure, I mentioned this a minute ago, when we do our quality assurance, we try to ensure that it's the same rock,
Got it.
like the same bulk of rock.
Awesome.